There we are. Got it. Welcome to the seminar and thanks for attending. Thank you, Kunjun. Yes, today we're going to, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Writing the personal statement for applying for a job, internship, or to graduate school. So basically writing any kind of short personal statement or personal essay. And the very good news at the beginning, the wonderful news that we have for you at the very beginning is that whatever you have to write, if you have a Thammasat ID number, all you have to do, if you'd like some advice or suggestions, editorial advice, is to Google Thammasat abstract, and you get the English Abstract Editing Service. And that is for all texts that are short, that are in English. Here's the Thai version of the same service. And send it to us. It's free, no cost. And within 3 working days, it will be returned to you with suggestions and advice about how to make it better. So whatever you have to write, which is short, it could be an abstract, it could be a personal statement, just send it along to the Thammasat University Library English Language Abstract Editing Service. And as you see, if you get to that page, I'll just mention again, you Google Thammasat Abstract. First thing that comes up is this service, which you can read about in Thai language. And then you go to the service page, you log in with your ID, if you're a student or a member of the Thammasat staff or an instructor, you put in your information, phone number, purpose, right? And you choose the file to upload, and that's it. If you wish, again, this is on English, but you can, of course, have the form in Thai language. So it's, if you prefer, there you are, and you choose what you want to say. So that, regardless of what you have to write, there is assistance available, and it is free. Okay. And we'll just move on quickly before getting right into the question of personal statements. A lot of people obviously are not comfortable writing essays in English. It is, after all, if you're a non-native speaker of English, it means expressing your own personality and in a way defining yourself in a foreign language. It is difficult. So keep in mind that the more you read in English of anything, could be absolutely anything, but the more you read, the more comfortable you'll be about reading in English and also about writing in English. So let me recommend our Thammasat University Library Read Ka Ben Facebook group. And again, if you just Google search Read Ka Ben, you get the home page on Facebook for Read Ka Ben. And then you see we have all these books and little book reviews, short little reviews of different books. And it's a little experience of reading English and about the books that are at the Thammasat University Library. And it's not painful. And so you can have that experience as well. Either by following or liking, you'll be updated on when new reviews appear. But that's, as I say, on the Read Ka Ben Facebook page. And finally, last thing before we go into our statements, personal statements, is the Thammasat Library blog. Again, searching Thammasat Library blog. And this is, of course, like the Read Ka Ben page. Those are available to everyone. They're not just for people who are Thammasat ID holders, but anyone can obviously enjoy them. And here's our Thammasat library blog. Here it is. In fact, this is about a blog about the abstract editing service, but if you click on my name, you will get the full list of English language blogs. Also, a lot about new books that are in the library. Here's one about a new book. There's ones about libraries of the world, free open access books. We often feature free open access books. So there's a lot to read about and enjoy, and which can also help your English when you are getting ready for the challenge of preparing a personal statement. Now, what does it mean really, the personal statement for the job, internship, or graduate school? Essentially, this means writing a short essay, often very few words, sometimes as few as 500, but you have to present yourself somewhat the way you do in a resume, but in a more charming, delightful way. Because what's in the resume is just dry facts. I went to this university, I did this job, you make a list. In the personal statement, where you want to get either higher studies in graduate school, maybe a fellowship, an internship, a job, you want to delight the people who are reading this, because they have to read many, many, many personal statements, and generally are rather bored, I think. So they like to be excited. And one of the things they constantly repeat, the people who have to read these personal statements, is, tell me a story, tell me a story. What does this mean? It means not like the resume where you just say, I did this, I did that, then I went here, then I did that. In the personal statement, they want a story. So let me give you an example. Suppose you want to write, you want to enter a graduate program, a PhD program in nutrition. Let's say you want to have food science to be your specialty. So you, instead of saying, I studied here, I studied, you say, when I was 8 years old, I went to Central Pinkau shopping mall with my little cousin, Chalermpong Songchak. And we first ate at KFC, and then we went to Burger King, and then we went to Swenson's, and then we went to Krispy Kreme, and we ate so much junk food, and we ate so many sweet desserts that finally my dear cousin exploded. And ever since that day, as I was putting the pieces together of my cousin, I thought about how important it is to eat nutritionally, to care for what we eat, and especially for young people in Thailand, to pay attention to what they're eating. That is the type of story that they're looking for. When you were 8 years old, this happened to you, and then you decided, and this, and of course, you have to think back in your own life when you decided things and when things happened to you, and those type of experiences, better to of course, speak about true experiences and not make them up, because you might not remember if you just make up some experience. And then if you have to give an interview, as they always say, it's always better not to lie, because it's easier to remember the truth. So just tell the truth, but think about what really has impressed you in that type of experience. You could say, if you wish to get an internship or a foundation fellowship to study engineering or hydraulics, or you could say that in the floods, the great floods of 2011, you had to swim to school and with your little brother, and that therefore you realized that there were wonderful ideas about water management, that His Majesty the King Rama IX, of course, King Bhumibol Adulyadej, had many wonderful ideas about the water management that were not necessarily followed at the time. And so you realize the importance of following sensible water management policies to avoid this kind of tragedy and flood in future. And therefore, this is why you were inspired to take up this field of study. So talk about something that personally affected you at an early age, and then move on. Move on in the second part of this rather short statement. So you're talking in a personal way. Move on to where you're discussing the specific thing you're replying to. And here I will say something that may not be popular. You may not like to hear it, but it really matters. So I will tell you this. For each thing that you apply to, each different school, each different program, each different job, each different fellowship, whatever it is, take a little time and design the statement for that reason. Don't think about sending the same statement for everything. Don't do it. Why? Because the people who read those statements, they realize, oh, this is the same sort of what they call a generic statement, a statement that applies to everything. It has no specific meaning for the company, the corporation you're maybe applying to a job, for a job with, the university you're applying for a job, whatever you're doing, make sure it applies specifically to your application that you're doing at that moment. Now, how long does it take to do that? Probably not very long. In fact, it may only take a few minutes, and I'll give you an example right now. Let's say you've decided to apply to the Harvard University PhD program in physics. Let's just say, I have no idea, but Harvard Physics PhD, right? Program. Everybody has a website, everyone. And so you Google, you go to the website of a corporation. If you want to work for the Nestle Corporation and you're applying for a job at Nestle's chocolate, Google Nestle and look at their corporate statement, because they pay people to put the information on the internet, as does Harvard, and they tell you these things about themselves so that you will learn and read about them. Now, I know that especially with higher education, quite a lot of students go to some place, maybe because their friend went, or they know another Thai person who went, or many Thai people go to this institution, so let's go too. But that is not a good reason, a good enough reason. It could be a good reason, but it's not enough for the people who are reading your personal statement. They want to know why you personally, not just you and your friends or a lot of Thai people like this university. That's nice, and it's even important. But the people who read your personal statement want to know why you, as an individual person, you must be in part of the program, hired by this corporation, why you deserve to get a fellowship, and not the person next door or your cousin. So here we are, we see that they talk about the Harvard physics department, cutting edge inventions, Higgs boson, first 51 qubit quantum computer, on and on. And it discusses what makes their program unique. And then if you are a physicist, obviously if you're not, you just look on whatever website you would like to apply for. You find what specifically excites you or interests you or something that you would like to work with. Or, and this is very important, if you're applying for a university fellowship or even just admissions in a graduate program, look at their faculty and find and name the people you would like to study with. Show that you're aware that they actually have professors on the payroll and the professors are there to teach. So when someone from Thailand expresses the specific wish to study with a great professor, whoever that might be, the people who read your statement will say, oh, he actually took 10 minutes or she actually took 10 minutes and paid attention to what we have to offer specifically as an institution, and may actually be happy and fulfilled by being in our department. Because what they don't want is someone who has no idea about what they will discover if they're admitted to the program, who has no clue about what they're, and this is not just about Harvard or any specific university, it's about all universities or even corporations. They want you to be happy. They want you to feel at home. They want you to feel like you're in the right place. And so the more you can show that you actually have researched, it's not perhaps the right term, research, because it really can be done in 10 or 15 minutes for each application. If you apply to 12 schools, it will take you perhaps 2 hours. And it's worth the 2 hours that you would invest, believe me, because how many years will you spend in a graduate school? You'll be there for years getting your higher degrees. So why not take 10 or 15 minutes and actually figure out, oh yes, I would like to be in that place. So do that little bit of preparation, and each time add that on to your personal statement right after the part where you say how you became passionate about the subject or about the area of concentration, either for the job or for the field of study. So you already introduced how you became very involved with what you plan to do in the future, and then go on to specifically, I am applying for this fellowship or whatever it is, admission to your PhD program. I'm applying for a job. I'm looking for a challenging job. And, I'm eager to join your team and all of this, because you will see that they will describe what it is that can appeal to you. And if you simply repeat to them, I'm fascinated by this and I'm delighted to learn that you offer this and that and the Center for Integrated Quantum Materials and all these other things. I mean, I won't spend much more time on this, but let's just say Nestle, Human Resources. If you want to work for the Nestle Corporation, which is a Swiss, or here's Nestle Thailand, it's of course a Swiss chocolate company. Here it is, Nestle Human Resources, Nestle Corporation. Human resources are people, their strengths, talent, and energy, and you can ask, there was the pop-up, you could ask, you say, I am thinking of applying for a job at Nestle, what do I do, or an internship. But here you have all of the different areas that they, and they will describe their own corporation. And if you take the time to read some of the text, you will get ideas about what to put in your statement that will be designed specifically for your application, let's say to Nestle or one of the other companies if you're looking for a job, or one of the other universities if you're looking for admissions to higher studies, or maybe a foundation that could give you a fellowship. Whatever you're looking for, you can get that if you spend a little bit of time preparing. It really pays off. So let me move on. This is basically what I'm saying, the business of, again, when you do the personal statement, it really is somewhat surprising, but the people who sit there and read them for hours and hours, because of course people send in hundreds of personal statements and someone has to read them, even they have to pass them around. So they have more than one person may read your personal statement, and then they have to remember them and discuss them in their meetings. So it has to be, what you write should be memorable. It should be, they should be able to describe it in just a few words. And they specifically love people who have faced individual challenges. When the flood of 2011 affected all of the kingdom and I was swimming to school, whatever you had to go through in your life, and the fact that you got through and are now in a condition to apply for a job, apply for higher studies, apply for a fellowship, it didn't destroy you, whatever it was that was the challenge. Talk about that. It shows that you have maybe more inner strength than you would suspect, that you actually have the the decisive willpower to get through issues, problems, whatever they are. Talk about that in your personal statement. They love that. They want to know, because one of the things they think about in a whether it's in a corporation or a university or any other situation, they will say, okay, sometimes our work, our university curriculum, or even the professional assignments in a corporation can be stressful. There can be a lot of work. Will this person crumble? Will this person collapse if we give them too much to do or too many responsibilities? Or will they be strong and fight on until they can get through? So if you tell them in your personal statement, oh, well, I had these challenges in my life, but I got through. I just kept going. They love that. They think that means you're a survivor and that you can deal with challenges and pressures and things. Because as you know, even if you're just an undergraduate, life gets more difficult as you get older. So in fact, you better prepare for some challenges. And it's nice if you have them early, then you're not surprised. Because if you've had an easy time, no problem, then first of all, there's not much to talk about in your personal statement, But I think that it makes all the difference when you think about these resumes or about personal statements. On the one hand, it's a little annoying. Someone is asking about your life. They want to know what you did. And you might say, well, I had some time off of the school and I just sat around home and I watched some series, and then I would meet my friends at the mall, That's very nice, and it's good to have fun. But on the other hand, if you want to have something that looks good on the resume, something that looks good in the personal statement, it encourages you to be a little more active, socially aware, volunteering for programs, and that can actually help you to figure out what to put in your personal statement, because you did, let's say, spend a couple of months helping in some way of some form of volunteering that people will appreciate when they read about. So anyway, specific individual challenge. Should you mention all your professional and learning experience in your personal statement? Okay, but don't repeat, as I think I said before, so I won't repeat it, but don't repeat information that is in other parts of your application, whether it's in your cover letter or your resume. Don't just say the same thing that you've already said, because they will read it all and then they'll see, oh, they're giving us the same information again. They don't need it to be said twice. Don't make a list. Just, you have to sort of interpret. I was working here and this happened to me, or this was important that I did that because, and then you go on and describe why it was important. What about, should I mention academic failures or problems? Well, it's okay, but the personal statement is meant to be very encouraging. So don't spend a lot of time. I mean, on the one hand, you can certainly talk about challenges, but on the other hand, don't go negative. Don't spend too much time talking about something that didn't work out. Better to just talk about things that did work out and why you're pleased with them and why you're proud, or why you're delighted that this happened. Give them a happy feeling in your personal statement, rather than I tried this and then I failed. Why do you want to become a physicist at Harvard? Because I tried to be a doctor and I failed. Not such a good reason, Better to talk about physics or whatever it is that you're interested in a positive way. Now, can I use the same statement for applications to save time? Change it, as I said before. Don't use the same. Please don't use the same statement. It's not really a time saver if no one accepts you. Then you feel like you really wasted your time, not to mention the application fees. Of course, applying for a job, you don't have to pay a fee. But if you apply, as you know, if you've ever tried, if you're trying to apply to graduate school, it can become quite costly once you sent in 10, 12 applications with the fees. So to make sure at least a couple of those applications go through, one or two, it's worth it to spend a little bit more time with each one, and then you will design your personal statement to suit whatever you wish to apply for. Because again, the people who are reading them have read so many personal statements, they know immediately, oh, this person is sending the same statement to everyone. And they'll think, oh, well, person who was applying couldn't be bothered. They didn't care that much. They weren't that interested to write a specific personal statement for the Harvard University Graduate Department of Physics. So maybe that person doesn't really want to attend the Harvard University Department of Physics all that much, because they didn't want to spend a few more minutes to really focus a personal statement on about that place. That's sort of the impression that's given. So if you think about the impression that you're giving, and you sort of want to be polite and respectful, well, the way to do it is to spend a little more time and then feel like you really know about the place that you're hoping to go to. Now, this seems to be very obvious, but Google everything is the general advice, because if you may be a very talented scientist, you know, but if you are, let's see, back to the, if you are, let's say you're applying to Harvard and you're applying to the physics department, right? Now, here you are, you've spelled, or I have spelled Harvard and physics wrong, which can happen if you're typing fast or you don't particularly look where you're going. And again, you're writing a foreign language, so there you are. Google will tell you immediately, oh, you mean Harvard physics, spelling it correctly. But let's just say you search, this is in your resume. Well, if you want to attend the Harvard physics department, see, they will tell you again, don't you mean Harvard physics? Because if you write this and you spell it wrong, they will know you're writing English as a non-native English speaker, and they will know, they will understand that, you know, there may be some issues of language, but the fact that you didn't bother to put on the Word document, whatever it is, and spell check, it just seems like you're not devoting enough time, maybe, to the presentation. Because at some point you will, let's say they admit you to their program, whatever subject it is, they will expect that you spell check and you use whatever the devices are to improve your English once you're in a program. So you might as well get started as early as possible to get used to it, because that's what they will expect once you're admitted. So try doing that before you get in, and it'll make it a lot easier. And also your personal statement will be that much more appealing and attractive to the people who are deciding whether it's good or not. And as I said, look at the website at the university or the corporation, see what you genuinely are excited about, or what you like, or what you'd like to do, or what you'd like to pursue. Whatever it is, mention it in your personal statement. Just like when you mention the things that happened to you when you were 8 years old, always mention the people's names. For example, if you're applying to a university program for a PhD, and you were somewhere during your education very impressed by a teacher, by an Ajarn, an instructor, mention that person's full name. Because first of all, at universities, they like it if you're impressed by teachers and instructors. They think that's a good student, someone who remembers the name of the professor or instructor they had years ago and appreciates what they learned. And mentioning the name of instructors from the past always goes over very well for applications to universities. Similarly, if you're just talking about a personal statement for a job in a corporation, if you mention someone from your past, your aunt or your cousin or your brother or sister, mention their name as well, so that everyone has a certain identity. It's not just my cousin, but what was your cousin's name? My cousin Chalermpan Sangcho. Somebody's name, so that person really lives in the imagination of the person who reads this personal statement. And we will be looking in a few minutes, we'll be looking at some samples of personal statements that are on websites of universities. So they have approved these personal statements and they recommend these personal statements in terms of style and in terms of content, so that you will see that if you mention names of people, it's much more lively. The people who are rather bored sitting all day reading the personal statements of all of the people who send in applications, those people are more entertained and more interested by a personal statement that talks about real people and that gives details and focuses on, I mean, at some level, this is about writing in English. Even we could call it creative writing in a sense. And obviously that's a subject that's a very great challenge and way beyond the scope of this little presentation. But if you think about writing something that's lively, something that's convincing, something that's persuasive, something that's memorable, and that people will want to read more of and read to the end, then in fact it means that if you've done a good job, then you are a good writer in English. Think about it. It's possible. People have done it, so why not you? So if you just focus on that and spend a little more time, the point is, yeah, if you do that little bit of effort, you can give the idea to the people who are reading and judging your personal statement. Yeah, that person might do well here. That person might fit in. That person is the sort of person we're looking for. The attitude, the experiences, the reasons why they want to join us, or join our department, join our corporation. They seem to have thought it out and have valid reasons for why we are appealing to them as a university department, as a corporation, or as a foundation giving out grants or fellowships or internships. Whatever it is that you're hoping for and looking for, if you spend a little more time to prepare, the people who read your statement will realize that and appreciate it. Because they will also say, well, if it's just a sort of generalized statement that's been sent to everyone, they'll say, well, maybe this person will be just as happy somewhere else if we don't accept them, or if we don't give them the fellowship, or if we don't hire them. Maybe they'll be better off in another situation. Well, you want to make it clear to whoever you're applying to that no, in fact, you really would like to be with them, not necessarily with another corporation, university, foundation, whatever it is. You try to show why specifically you want to be where you're applying to. So specifically, should I put in jokes? No. Why? Because you'll say, oh, it's part of my personality. All my friends laugh at my jokes. I'm considered very humorous. I'm considered a delightful, entertaining person. I'm sure that's all true if this is how you feel. However, you don't know the person or persons who are reading your personal statement. You don't know. There are some people without a sense of humor, or let's say with less sense of humor, or they think they have a sense of humor, but not really. They take things very, very seriously, perhaps. There are some people like that. And so you never know. You may be making a little joke, or you may think it's funny, and someone else doesn't. And then they're offended. So you don't want to offend people when you're trying to interest them and get them to like you and approve. Better to be serious. And if you can avoid making jokes, at least for the length of your 500-word statement or whatever it is, your personal statement, better not to put in humor or jokes into a personal statement. Because again, some people may confuse, they think that jokes are disrespectful. That's not an impression you want to make. Also, most jokes are not what could be considered formal English. Usually jokes are informal. And these types of writing are generally supposed to be formal English. So again, better to be, even if it means being a little bit boring, better to be serious in the statement. Well, can I write more or fewer words than are asked for? Don't write more. Because again, a lot of students think, oh, if I write more than they asked for, it shows I work hard and they'll think, they'll be very impressed. No, they won't be impressed. It just means they have to read more. And they spend all day reading these statements. They don't need someone who can't read instructions and who writes more, means they have to read more. It just means extra work for them. They don't appreciate that at all if you write more than is asked for. It's a little bit like, I use the kind of comparison of someone, a company, when you're watching TV and you see a TV commercial, and the TV commercials are 30 seconds or 1 minute, whatever they are, 45 seconds. So let's say someone has spent a lot of money, because it costs quite a lot of money to put a commercial on TV. So they did a 30-second commercial about whatever the subject is, maybe a baby food or something like that. And the company comes and says, oh, well, we spent the money and we have the 30-second commercial, but our product is so wonderful, we want to speak for 90 seconds about it, not 30 seconds. And the television station will say to them, well, sorry, but you paid enough for 30 seconds and that's it. You may have wonderful things to say about your product, but you must say them within 30 seconds, and that's the challenge. So actually, part of the thing that you're being asked for in a personal statement is actually to say something within a particular limited space. Means being concise, means every word counts. So don't go over the word limit. Now, should you go under the word limit? Yes, you can, as long as everything is there that you would like to be there, as long as you're not just putting in very few bits of information or personal reflections or ideas or thoughts. Put in enough so that you feel you're representing yourself well, and that you've talked about your life and why you're interested in this field, and then you've talked about the place that you'd like to go, or the place you'd like to get the fellowship from, whatever it is, so that you show that you've thought about your own progress and what you would like to do in the future. And then you've also thought about the place where you're thinking of going or applying to. And as long as you've done both of those things, and it's still not the full number of words they ask for, that's fine. You may have just said it all in fewer words. This is just, again, to show respect and be polite to the people who read this. We don't want to waste their time, or at least take more of their time than they reasonably should expect you to take. We'd like to think we're not wasting their time, but on the other hand, if they have many personal statements to read through, obviously, if we take more of their time than other people, it seems like we're being a little greedy and we're not being sensitive and thoughtful. And it's important to show we can follow instructions. If we get guidelines, we know how to adapt to them. If we absolutely don't follow instructions, they may think that there could be a problem later on if we're hired, or if we're accepted, or if we're given a fellowship? Will we know how to follow whatever the guidelines are, or will we go and completely haywire, as they say? And then the fewer words, okay. Right, we want to be enthused about the subject. What about using technical vocabulary in the personal statement? Technical vocabulary, how scientific, or how, whatever the field is, whatever the subject is, how specialized? Well, again, we don't know who will read these statements. So it really should be a personal statement should be for the general reader without technical vocabulary. Don't assume, and especially don't assume, that the reader will know abbreviations. Thai English, Thai style is to put all these abbreviations. Some of the time we don't even know what the actual abbreviation is for, the full term, because it requires spelling lots of long words that we may or may not be able to do. So we remember these little acronyms, as they call them, the letters, but we don't know necessarily what they mean. So don't use those terms, because if we don't fully understand it, probably the person reading our personal statement doesn't understand it either. And that is a problem. So we don't want to confuse people or mystify them. What are they talking about? What are they writing about? We want it to be clear what we're writing about. So try to keep it clear and simple and plain English language without fancy terms and long words or technical words. Tell a story. Talk about your life. Yeah, so this is just another example. You're applying, let's say, to a graduate program to be a foot doctor, a podiatrist. And instead of saying something general about how important it is that people take care of their feet, or statistics show that people's feet are very important, you could talk about, there was in the Bangkok Post in January, there was a Buddhist monk, Luang Tabun Chuan, who walked for 1,500 kilometers, which from Phuket to Nakhon Phanom, and clearly by the end of that, his feet must have been in a rather challenging situation. So you could say, well, that incident inspired me to realize how important feet are, something like that. In other words, a little anecdote, a little story, a little background to why you personally are so inspired by foot doctors and taking care of people's feet, rather than a kind of general and not specific story. You want a real story that someone can remember. Oh yes, this student says there was a Buddhist monk who walked for 1,500 kilometers. Oh, like that. And then they can discuss it amongst themselves, the people who make the decisions, and then they'll remember you, and then they might accept you. If you're not memorable, it's less likely that you will be accepted or hired or admitted or given the fellowship. So whatever it is about yourself that can be specific, unique to you, is the best. How much about your own life experience in the personal statement? Well, as I said, the first part definitely about you, first half or more, but then leave a little room for the place you're applying to, just to make sure you're aware of them too. Not all about you. You don't want to seem selfish or only concerned with yourself. You want to also show that you're interested in wherever it is you're supposed to be in the next few years, or maybe wherever you want a fellowship from, or whatever job you want to be hired for. How many times should you revise? Well, this is a painful subject, because obviously if you finally finish writing something, you don't want to necessarily start rewriting. It could be painful, but it does help. It does help to go over it again. If you can read it to someone, even if you read it to your cat, it can help. It can be better than having just no one else to sort of bounce off the whatever it is you've written, the personal statement. And anyone who would listen, who knows some English, because you're obviously writing a personal statement in English, which is, again, more challenging than writing one in Thai language. And you can reread it and you could say, well, maybe the questions that they ask in the application I haven't quite answered here, or I didn't answer all of them, and maybe I should add something here. And we can learn about ourselves in reading the personal statement after we have written it. We can say, well, yeah, that's why I really want to go to Harvard Physics Department or whatever it is. So that's really, I've persuaded myself that in fact, this is a place I would like to go. So what to put in? Your life experience, things that are special, impressive, maybe did not happen to everyone. Again, personal problems, family problems, inspiring people who influenced you. My teacher, my instructor, when I was 6 years old, and mention the person's name, Ajahn Chalermpan Sanchut, inspired me, like that. Because you want to be different. Now, one of the things about young people, particularly who are students or maybe applying for a first job or something like that, is they often want to be like everyone else. They want to join in and belong and feel accepted. So they don't want to feel particularly unique or different from everyone else. But the personal statement is one exercise where it really helps. It pays off to be unique and different from everyone else, because you want to be remembered when they have to pick one person out of 100 or 200 or 300 or 500. You want to be one who is different, because otherwise you're just with all of the ones they don't pick. So in fact, you do have to think a little bit. It's better to think a little bit about why you have your personal experience, your own point of view, your life story, your little anecdote or story you can talk about in your family or your education that can bring your personal statement to life. Should you mention all of your education, for example, grade school, high school, all of that? Better to talk about what's most recent, unless something very dramatic happened to you when you were small, which is okay, then talk about it. But the more recent you can discuss things, that's the better sort of thing to put into your statement. Should you discuss religion or politics in your personal statement? No, no, you should not. In general, I mean, if you're applying to a PhD program in Buddhist studies, of course you can discuss Buddhism because you're going to be studying Buddhism, and naturally it's the subject of your study. Or if you're looking for a fellowship related to Buddhist studies, then of course you will mention Buddhism. That's not a question, not a problem. But just like you try to avoid jokes or humor in your personal statement, you also should try to avoid what can be considered controversial, something that someone may be offended by, like a joke that doesn't go well, or maybe a subject having to do with religion or politics that people don't agree with. So if you can, to try to avoid offending people by putting these types of things in your personal statements. Because again, unless, for example, if you're applying to a PhD program in political science, of course you mention politics. It's the subject of your study, of course. But if you're applying to a PhD program in chemistry or biology, probably not relevant, whatever the religion or whatever the politics might be. And so think about whether it really is appropriate for the goal that you have in mind. And certainly when you apply to a corporation, to a job, they don't really want to hear what your politics or your religion are, because first of all, especially international companies are not supposed to choose you or not based on what your religion or politics might be. And so actually, they really prefer not to know. They don't want to know what your politics or religion are, because it will seem like, if they accept you, it will seem like they've accepted you because of your religion or your politics, or maybe it will seem like they did not accept you because of your religion or your politics. So you don't want to give them that information because it's awkward, it's difficult for them. You know, they wanted, just based on your record and how you describe yourself and your personal statement and your goals and how you present yourself, that's how they decide whether they want to give you the fellowship money or accept you in their corporation or accept you in their graduate program. That's all. So again, unless you're studying religion or politics or related subjects, better to stay away. Yeah, just really you're supposed to be focusing on why you're well suited for the academic program or job. How much research should you do for each job or internship opportunity or graduate school that you're applying to? Well, enough so that you get a little idea of what you might like about the place. Again, think about it. You know, most jobs, people stay for at least, even when they're very young, they stay for a year or two, perhaps even more very often. But if you're going to be spending a few years, whatever it is, a university, a job, internship, it's worth spending a few minutes to learn about the place, read online on their website, and get enough information so that you can decide, yeah, this is an attractive place for me. I would like to be there. And here's why. And then mention that in your personal statement. And you can certainly say, if it's an international opportunity that means traveling, certainly you can say, oh, I'd like to be wherever it is, this country or that country. I love the culture. I love the food. You could even say, whatever it is, I want to be there and I want to spend some time there because I love that place and I have a real interest in the culture and the experience of being in that place. That's fine. What about previous experience? Well, in a personal statement, usually, like in a resume, in a personal statement, the people who read them want to get an impression that you have leadership potential, that you're a leader. What is a leadership? What is leadership potential, or what is a leader? It's not someone who's bossy and tells people what to do. You do that, you do that, you do that. That's very easy. Anybody can do that. That's not a leader. A leader is trying to motivate people to do even more than they thought they could do and make them want to do that. Not just saying, you do that, you do that. So leader is not bossy person. Leadership potential suggests that you can actually inspire people, that by being nice to them and understanding them, you can make them want to do wonderful things whenever they work with you. And that is something you have to think about in terms of your past studies, when you worked in groups, when you worked with other people on whatever the project was, where you were happy to work together and you had some ideas and the other people appreciated them, whatever it is that shows you with leadership potential, because they like universities like that, certainly corporations like it, to hire someone who they feel, yes, this person will work well with other people and will make them do excellent work just by being there and by being understanding and thinking about other people and being considerate. That is leadership, not someone who says, I told them to do that and they did it. No, that's very, very easy and not impressive, and that's not leadership. That's kind of being a dictator, you know. It's sort of so think about where you think about what you did in the past that fits the sort of the honor of leadership. Let's see. Personal career goals. What personal career goals should you mention? Well, the key point is, and this is particularly when you're applying to a corporation or a job, in your personal statement, not about money, because most jobs, well, certainly a lot of jobs don't pay very much, but even the ones that do pay more, they don't want to hear that you're only interested in the salary, because they will think, well, the minute they find another job that pays even more, they'll go. In other words, if the only thing holding you to a job that you otherwise hate and that you otherwise have nothing in common with is the salary, because it's high, let's say, that will not impress a potential employer, because they know that all that this employee is there for is the money. And when they figure out a way to make even more money, they will go. They want employee retention, they call it. They want to hold on to you after they've bothered to train you at some expense and effort and time. They would like you to stay and be happy. They don't want you to go off and use the knowledge they have given you to make more money somewhere else. So think about it. If you, in your personal statement, if the main thing that you can think about to mention is your salary, that may mean actually that you can consider it maybe is not the right place for you. Because ideally, even if you're in a business field and you're a business person and you're looking to work in business, if you can find something where you really have something that will satisfy you and make you feel good in addition to your salary, then you will probably want to stay there a bit longer and you will feel closer to that place. So again, you really want to say, well, make the world a better place, help conditions for others in society, not just money. Yeah. Now, in the remainder of our time, I'd like to look at some sample personal statements and get an idea about what we should be looking for. And the more of these you look at, if you just read through a bunch of personal statements, you will get an idea, first of all, of the form, how the sentences are shaped, how the paragraphs look, and the content, what people put in and what they don't put in. And also keep in mind that these personal statements that we have here on the PowerPoints and that will be sent out later, so you can look at them if you like. These are mostly from educational institutions. They're from EDU, that means university. So it means these are actual university recommendations for personal statements of people who they accepted. So when you consider this is actual, the people who are accepting or not accepting your application are giving you advice, EDU, about the sort of thing they're looking for. So that's helpful. Examples of successful personal, here's one from Princeton, EDU, another one, EDU. This is in England, but it's also a university because ACUK means a university in England. And it goes on. Exeter, another university in England, King's College London, university in England, just to give you an idea. So let's look at some of those. We won't have time for all of them, but let's look at some of the sample personal statements that succeeded. All right, someone is applying, let's see, word count, only 500 words. For 23 years, my grandmother, a veterinarian and epidemiologist, ran the communicable disease department of a mid-sized urban public health department. The stories of Grandma Betty, so he's writing about, or she's writing about the grandmother talking about sexually transmitted diseases, the AIDS crisis. The grandmother has always been a huge inspiration to me, and the reason why a career in public health was always on my radar. There we are. In the very first paragraph, grandma worked in public health. I was always impressed by grandma. I want to work in public health. They've already started and said what it is. We have a family tradition. I love my grandmother. She's a wonderful public health specialist. I want to be like my grandmother. So that person has very clearly said in just a few words why they were interested in studying public health at the graduate level. Now, goes on. Recent years have cemented that interest, means have increased my interest or made it more solid. In 2012, my parents adopted a little brother from China. And then the brother adopted from China was diagnosed with a form of muscular dystrophy. And if the condition had been discovered in China, the poor orphanage where he spent more than 8 years of his life would have thought of the condition as a death sentence and not given him food. So this is very serious subject, very important subject. Again, about public health, about health issues. And then, so starting with the grandmother, going on to the adopted brother, who might have been just allowed to die without food in an orphanage in China because of having a medical condition. Then, paragraph 3, it is not right that some people have access to the best doctors and treatment while others have no medical care, okay? Based on grandmother's experience in public health, adopted brother's experience with public health around the world, I want to pursue a Master of Public Health degree in socio-medical sciences at Columbia, because studying social factors in health with a particular focus on socio-health inequalities will prepare me to address these inequities. Now, you know, you've already read that much and you say, okay, this is a very serious person who has passionate family reasons for continuing the studies, and they start to say what they learned about in undergraduate work, having healthcare experience in employment, wants to get a PhD later afterwards, help transform health landscapes both in America and abroad. So someone with a global vision, someone with international interests, someone with a half brother or adopted brother who is from China. So this is a person who you could say, oh, well, they have really profound involvement with public health. They care and show why they're interested in this subject, and they will make an impact around the world if we educate them. Well, for a university department, they'll say, wow, this person really looks like someone who would do great things if we give them the right training. And they will say, yes, let's give them a chance, you see. So if you can find subjects like that you're deeply passionate about, or you're personally involved with, or that have affected your life in a strong way, think about it. Sometimes you have to think about it, but then if you realize, okay, that really did impress me, something in your life or something that you read or something you learned in a class, talk about those things in that way in the beginning of your personal statement, where you talk about your family or your life, and then going on to, in the second half, talking about more general subjects about education and your education and what you did in the past in your education, what you hope to do in the future, where you will be in a few years, what kind of further studies you might do, where you might apply those studies. All of these things can be in a very short statement of just 500 words, as you see. Now, Kunjun, do you think we should answer some questions? Because there seem to be some, right? Is that It's about time now to answer questions. What do you think?
Now there are like 4 or 5 questions.
Uh-huh.
Okay, can I start to ask the questions?
Yeah, please do. Go ahead.
Okay. For the first one is, should I use formal or informal English? According to the example, it looks like it's just telling your story and inspiration for a work.
Yeah, well, I would say closer to formal English, closer to formal than informal, because the problem with informal English, first of all, in Thai English, the ideas of informal are like the way people write texts to their friends, Wana, W-A-N-N-A, and things like that. That's not good. That's not good. Because again, for the same reason that you don't put jokes or humor, you want to make sure that you're taken seriously and that you show that you're being serious about your application for whatever it is. So here, for example, I'm trying to look at an example here of what might be considered, this is formal English. In fact, it's almost a sort of literary English. So I would say, yeah, there's no informality here. The only thing I could think of is to say won't instead of, or don't instead of do not, or would not, wouldn't. But even there, I don't think that helps your statement much. So really, I think it's best to stick with formal English. I don't see how that would limit you very much, because honestly, if you want to be taken seriously and you want them to read you with sympathy, but also respect and interest, formal English is the way to go. Because again, with informal, you never quite know, or slang or other terms that may or may not please the people who are reading what you've written. So it's a little risky, I would say, to write informal English, just because we tend to use informal English with our friends, people who know us. And of course, the people we're writing a personal statement to do not know us. We don't know them. And so for that reason, to show respect for the institution we're applying to, including a corporation, but especially a university, a program, a foundation that gives fellowships, internship, whatever, we want to show respect, and we want to be polite. And so for all those reasons, I would say you're much better off using formal English. Yeah. Okay, next question.
All right, for the next questions is, how many pages should it be?
Okay, they will tell you. When you do when you fill out an application and you need to do a personal statement, they will say, like at the top of this one, 500. Do a personal statement of 500 words or less. Do a personal statement of 750 words or less. It may vary, 600 words. Different applications have different they do it by word count usually. And again, since you're using a Word document, the word count is very easy to tell when you're getting near the limit. You can stop before you get too many words, and each university or each job opportunity may require different word counts. If they give you no word count, then it's really up to you. You can decide how much you have to say that's meaningful and of interest. Again, you don't want to go on and on and on, because it may be just too much for the other person to read. If you can say it all in a few words, that's great. But that's when you have no word count at all. Usually, especially a university will give you some idea of what your word count should be. Which is another reason why it's good to sort of adjust the application for each thing you're applying to. For example, you could keep the thing about your relatives or your family history. In this case, the person who wrote this could keep the thing about the grandmother, because that's a valid and impressive fact for whatever they're applying for, almost. And maybe the part about the brother, the adopted brother. But then in the latter part, where maybe applying for an internship or a fellowship or a graduate department, that would change depending on what you're asking them to do for you, because you want to fit whatever the particular challenge is or whatever the particular department is. Okay. What about gender issues? Should we write that? Okay, it depends what you mean. For example, if you mean as a challenge or an obstacle, or do you mean should you even mention gender issues as opposed to mentioning religion or mentioning politics? I guess it depends, it depends what the context is. If you're applying again to a gender studies program, of course you mention gender issues because that's what you're studying. If you want to get a PhD in gender studies, naturally you talk about gender issues. If you want to mention gender issues as an obstacle, or as something where you had to conquer problems or challenges, again, why not? Absolutely. If you're applying to some universities, particularly private universities, perhaps associated with, let's say, some churches in America or even in Europe, you might think once or twice about, discussing gender issues where they might potentially be offended because not everyone has the same open-minded attitude about gender issues, and some people are rather closed-minded, as we know. So again, it depends. But then again, think about this. If gender issues are important to you, why would you want to be at a university where they're not nice about gender issues or where they're closed-minded? Better to be in a country or in a university, where you wouldn't have that headache. Really be in a place where you'll feel more comfortable and you'll be more accepted. Why should you go to some place where people don't like women or don't like gays or don't like trans people or whatever it is? Why spend time there? This is part of your life. Whether you're doing graduate studies or you're doing some employment opportunity or internship, you have to live there in addition to doing all those things. It's not just studying or doing your professional work. You also have to live there as a person. So some people will go to countries where the attitude is very negative, but why would you want to do that if you have an option and can go somewhere that's more welcoming? So in a way, the gender issues, perhaps like religion or politics, in the same token, you might not apply to a university or a corporation that has either politics or religious attitudes that are opposed to your own. Why would you want to be part of an institution that was obviously against the way you feel? So if you try to find a place where you'll feel happy, in addition to the university or the corporation, you want to find the actual place where you would be working or studying that would be welcoming to you. And if that's the case, if you're applying to the University of San Francisco or something like that, clearly they have no problem with gender issues, because in San Francisco, in other places in America, especially on the two coasts of America, the gender issue question has been thoroughly discussed. Perhaps if you want to go to some institution in Alabama or Mississippi, they would be less welcoming to you if you discuss gender issues. But in that case, again, why would you want to go to a place where you're not welcome or where your attitudes are going to be opposed, and you'll just feel all the time that you'll have maybe a little trouble finding people who agree with you, or it can be a tremendous waste of time. Whereas if you do a little research and you look up, if, for example, gender issues are very important to you, and you just do a Google search, let's see. Most enlightened graduate departments, gender issues. Let's see if this comes up. Probably something will happen. Well, they're not naming specific universities, but this is in fact about STEM research, but gender issues, maybe better to say search for gender studies. Let's see if that comes up with anything. PhD program. Okay, PhD program list. So if gender issues are important to you, here's a whole list of different PhD programs. Again, all we did was search for gender studies PhD, and we got this list of Arizona, which in itself one may not think of as the first place to go for gender studies, but here they've got a program. California, Atlanta, also Indiana, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and so it goes. New Jersey, New York, Texas. Again, you may find a department which is enlightened, but the place may not be great about gender issues and gender sensitivity. So you may be accepted in a department, but you may be a little disappointed at the level of understanding and consciousness and awareness that you find among everyday people in a given place. So do a little research there too, you know. Here you are at Texas Women's University, which is a famous university, but a little bit about, you know, what Denton, Texas is like and all that sort of thing. Not the official website, but more like what people say about it who have to live there, that type of thing. This sort of research can be done in just a few minutes, and you can decide whether it's even worth applying to a place and how much sensitivity and understanding. So if you find it's an obstacle or have found it's an obstacle that you overcame in your life, by all means, mention it, as long as you know that the people you are writing to will be appreciative of your effort. If you feel or have even the slightest suspicion that they won't be sympathetic, then maybe you don't want to be applying there after all. Whatever the program is or whatever the corporation is, you want to be sure that you'll be welcomed before you start. And so that extra little bit of research can tell you, yes, this is a place that would be understanding of me and would support me and be encouraging to me. And that little bit of research can tell you whether that will be the case or not. If I didn't answer the right question for you, or you meant something else about gender issues, just you could add another question or comment, and we'll try to answer that too at the end. Just let us know. And what is the next? Should we use metaphors? Oh, how literary, metaphors. Well, you can use metaphors and similes. Definitely, why not? I would imagine it's fine to use metaphors. But remember that you want to speak specifically about your own experience. So let's just go back to this one. I mean, there's other statements we could talk about, but since this was a particularly strong one, I'm staying with this for the moment. If you notice, the person here obviously has a lot of deep feeling about these issues of public health, grandmother, adopted brother, and it is not right that some people have access to the best doctors and treatment while others have no medical care. Difficult to argue with that statement, but imagine if they had used metaphors or sort of a hyperbole, let's say a hyperbolic statement, exaggeration, too much, over the top. It could be a little offensive perhaps to some people. It is terrible. It is terrible that this happens in the world. I cry every night that don't get too excited. Don't, this is formal English. You don't want to seem like you're in hysterics about these things, even though this is very serious stuff. The grandmother, the half-brother who almost died in a Chinese orphanage. Those are very serious life and death issues, but the person remained calm when discussing it, just saying it is not right. That's all that has to be said. It's not right. Notice also they did not do an informal contraction. It's not right, ITS. No, it is not right. Formal English. Makes a good impression. But they remain controlled because, again, in your personal statement, even when you're talking about very intimate things, your family, your personal life, your experience, what you had to, the challenges you had to overcome to get through and be where you are today, even though you're dealing with these very passionate subjects, you remain in control because you want to show them that when you have challenges in your studies or in your employment, when it becomes too much and people get, they run out of the office bar or whatever it is, you will remain calm and you will remain in control. And that is a leadership quality. Someone who remains calm and in control when others are panicking, that is leadership. That means that you can actually help the situation. You're not just getting too upset to be useful. So you're talking about very serious subjects, but you don't want to use too much literary sort of effect or too many literary devices like metaphor or other literary devices, because you're not writing a poem, you're not writing a song lyric, you're writing a personal statement. So it's prose. And it's a sort of accepted that in prose, you remain within a certain emotional tone. So what happens with metaphor is that it can often start to seem like you're discussing the whole world and you're discussing subjects that are beyond the real focus of the precise subject you're talking about, which is why I want to be hired for this job, why I want to receive this fellowship, why I want to study at your program, at your university, in your city, in your country. Be very detailed and specific, and you may not need metaphors because you're talking about very particular things. You're really focusing and you're dealing with rather small things, not metaphor, which can often be wonderful in literary works, particularly in poetry. But you don't need to generalize because you're talking about very detailed things. That is where you make the most impression. And not so much in the sort of vague or perhaps general statement that applies to all and everything. I hope that answers your question. Tell an impressive, inspiring story. Would you recommend one anecdote, event, or a few ones? All right. Well, again, that depends how many stories you have, and again, how many words you have to put them all in. This person put in 2 impressive stories, and actually one longer than the other, about the grandmother. The grandmother was someone who was very active in healthcare and was a role model for this person's future public health studies. The adopted brother is more of a victim, someone who suffered or almost died because healthcare is not equal around the world. And so that paragraph about the victim was considerably shorter. Notice fewer lines than the one about the grandmother who was an active person helping healthcare. The one about the victim, fewer lines. And that's enough. Two examples. Because why? If the person had added another or maybe 2 more examples, there might not have been room to talk about the specific reasons the person wants to be at Columbia studying this degree in socio-medical science, and what the person wants to do with the degree, and how the person wants to apply the degree. Because remember, in only 500 words, you have to deal with a lot. You have to talk about your life, your goals, your ideals, your experience, all that stuff. So if you tell too many stories, it could be a little too much, perhaps. Also, you want to mention why each story is important to you. So you don't just want to say, my grandmother worked in public health, my half-brother almost died in a Chinese orphanage. You want to at least give them enough words so that your story has some meaning and the people will understand what you're talking about. So if you try to put too many stories in without the proper detail, the reader may not understand, well, why are they telling us about the grandmother? Well, why was that impressive to the applicant? It's not clear. So this person goes on at some length about the grandmother, and then a little bit about the brother, just mentions his name, doesn't give a whole long paragraph about the brother. And notice, in terms of the person who was talking about metaphor, doesn't go on about, and then my brother told me and all that. Doesn't, just says enough so that we understand the situation and the subject, and then on to the next subject. So not spending too many words on each story, but even so, more than half, I think, of this statement is about these stories and anecdotes. So if you narrow it down to the most powerful stories, another alternative is, if 4 or 5 wonderful stories happen to you, use them differently in different personal statements. For one university, you might decide to put 2 different stories together. Perhaps for a job or for another university program, you'll put 2 other stories together. You mix and match, you decide whatever goes best, try it out, see how things go. And then you can ultimately decide what is the most impressive for you, what is the closest to your heart, and what means the most to you. So let's see, what next? Is it necessary to write a personal statement if I have a resume, or is it better if I have both for applying for a job? Well, if you're asked for a personal statement, it helps to have a personal statement. It depends. Most jobs, and certainly most applications for higher education, do require a personal statement. So you will at some point be asked for a personal statement, whether you want to give one or not. If you're just out in the working world and you're just sending out a resume whenever that's requested. By the way, before I forget, we have our previous little seminar was about resumes, in case you didn't attend that. And let's see, Thammasat University Library. Oops, no. On the YouTube channel. And let's see. Was it preparing a resume? Here it is. And so you're welcome to look at that. But another one we did was about professional emails, and that's now on YouTube. So you could look up either of those, or of course, many interesting presentations in Thai language as well. And you can just click on videos, and that's the Thammasat University Library YouTube channel. Or just go to YouTube and write in Thammasat Library on YouTube, Thammasat Library, and you can get ideas about resume. So even if you spell it wrong, you'll get the YouTube channel. Yeah, so if you have a resume, that is absolutely necessary, actually, although people don't like to think about it, but that is really necessary in the work world or even in the university world. Resumes are regularly asked for. Believe it or not, you do have to show a resume very often. People expect it. So you do need that to have a professional career. And as a personal statement, I would say when you're asked for it, it's good to know how to approach it if you haven't already had some idea. But if you've applied for graduate school, if you've applied for PhD programs, you will almost certainly have prepared or been asked for a personal statement. And so you will need both the resume and the personal statement, because the resume is a dry list of what you did and a factual list. You can't make up things for your resume. And a personal statement is also based on fact, because you're not supposed to make up things either. But it is more about your heart, where the things that are the most important for you have inspired you to do what you want to do in life. So these are things about you. You're writing your own life story in a way. So it's not a waste of time. My point is, it may seem very boring to have to do a resume or a personal statement, but both of those things are about you. And it can even, believe it or not, help you to better understand yourself. What is really important to me? What do I want to do? Sometimes parents are no help at all. They'll say, oh, we just want you to be happy. Well, thanks. Or you could do anything. You're smart. You could be a lawyer or a doctor. Thank you. But if you want to figure out what you want to do most, it sometimes helps to just think about it a little bit. And that is what you do when you write a personal statement. You think of the stories that have impressed you the most, the things in your life that have meant the most to you. And then you go on to say, to do these things, to really get something done, to achieve something, I want to go to this university, I want to work at that corporation, I want to do this and that, and here is why I want to join your organization. And then you can persuade someone that you would be the right person to do that. Let's see what else. What is the serious issue we should avoid, right, for writing the personal statements, such as words, sentences, or stories? Serious issue. Well, that's hard to answer. I'm not sure what you mean by serious issue. If you tell me more in the comment section, maybe we can answer a little more usefully. If you mean about not talking about politics or religion, for example, I think it's just, it has to do with trying to fit in, perhaps, in either an institution, an educational institution, or a corporation. All of these places have, by the way, they have sort of guidelines and ethics for how to behave and all the rest. And so,
such as overclaim words, over represent herself.
Is that the same question you mean?
Yes.
Over representing herself.
That is not true.
Oh, like exaggerating, like saying too many things. Yeah. No. Well, again, like I said before, really the best policy is just to tell the truth. Tell the truth. Because as I say, usually for jobs or for university studies, at some point you will have an interview in almost all cases, because they want to see you before they accept you. And at that point, they will ask you questions based on your resume and based on your personal statement. And if you forget or get it wrong, or forget what you wrote, or forget what you put in your resume, there can be a problem, because it is always easier to remember the truth. So tell the truth. And also, more and more now internationally, people are becoming very serious about resumes and personal statements. They don't like it if they hire you or accept you based on something that's not true, that was either in your resume or in your personal statement. That gives them the right, actually legal right, to throw you out, to say, sorry, we thought we were accepting or hiring this person, but in fact, you're really that person, so we don't want you. And they get rid of you, actually. This has happened now internationally in different countries. So you have to be very careful and make sure that what you say is true. But on the other hand, it's how you interpret it, you know, what happened to you and what it meant to you. I mean, they cannot say it's not true if you tell them you love your grandmother. Whatever it is, they're not going to challenge that. But if you say that you saved 27 people during a bus accident and that never happened, clearly there might be a problem. You can't just invent things that never happened to you in your life. But if you keep it to accurate facts, that should be fine. Yeah. So I would not say, try to avoid exaggeration is the point. Try to be very precise about what you're writing about.
And the last one.
Oh, is it a big problem if some people have English grammar issues? Well, let's go back to where we began. Anytime you have an English grammar issue or any English style issue or English writing issue, just Google Thammasat abstract, and you will be able to go and send whatever you write to the Thammasat University Library free English abstract editing service. And it can be any short text. It doesn't have to be an abstract. It could be anything that's a short text, and just submit it with a Thammasat University ID, upload it in a Word document form. Okay, got it. Oops, now what happened? And so each time you do that, and it's free, you'll get back your text, your Word document with advice, suggestions, recommendations within 3 business days. And that will, that should help in terms of your grammar. Of course, you're writing English as a second language. Of course, they don't expect everything to be perfect, but it's true that grammar and style and spelling and those issues can get in the way of you trying to make your statement. So at any rate, I wanted to say, now let's see, here we have our usual final happy, let's go to where we can go to our final Adobe, right. The final slide, which is thanks for your attention. And good luck to everyone who applies to anything. And send it to us at the Thammasat University Library Abstract Editing Service if you have any questions at all. The other point before we leave you is when you first go to the abstract service, so Thammasat abstract, you will notice this gives an email address for Kun Pin Pakwan and a phone, although the email is naturally better. So if you have any question, just send an email. And similarly, if you look at Read Ka Ben, the book review service of the Thammasat University Library with book reviews in English, if you look down here on the Read Ka Ben page, let's see if I can get. Here we are. This is my email address. So you can write to me if you wish. The address is listed on the Read Ka Ben group Facebook page of the Thammasat University Library. And here's the email address. So any questions, feel free to write in, and either about abstracts or other short texts or related matters. And you can reach us at those email addresses. So good luck in all of your applications, and I wish everyone wonderful acceptances.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Kun Benjamin, for the useful information today. I hope that we will use what we have learned today for for the future. And if you have any questions, once again, please feel free to contact me by email or Kun Benjamin by the email that you provide. And also you can contact the library as Facebook page and Line application at TU Library. All right, thanks again for joining this seminar today and hope to see you guys for the next topics of the library seminars and have a great day. Bye-bye.